Hello everybody, what's good, what's happening, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ethan Hall, your local real estate professional here in Columbus, Georgia. And in today's video, we're going to be going over homes you should not buy in Columbus, Georgia. So first up on this list is going to be homes that are backing or fronting a busy road. Now what counts as a busy road, I would say, is you can either knock on the doors of the neighbors in the neighborhood that you intend to go buy a home in, or you can also see by looking at the road in some of the, or a lot of the neighborhoods within the city. So within the neighborhood on the street, if you see the two yellow lines indicating that there is no passing in this zone, then that indicates that it is a very high traffic area within this location, which is why hence the double lines there. They do not want people to pass to avoid car accidents and things of that nature. So if you do see that in a neighborhood, I would definitely try to avoid it, because people really don't want to, especially if they have children or dogs and cats that like to be outside. They don't want to have to worry about cars zooming by, or these unknown people that you don't know constantly coming in and out of your neighborhood. Can kind of scare some people, and I know there is a certain risk factor with having a lot of random people just going through the neighborhood, especially whenever sometimes they go at light speed and they don't have any regard for anybody that is living inside of the neighborhood. So I would definitely try to avoid this. It's really not that popular amongst families, especially with children, as well as families with animals as well, due to the high traffic areas. And it kind of just takes away from the serene or the calmness it is to live inside of a decent neighborhood. Within the city, you don't want to hear vehicles constantly roaring their engines down your road at every time of the night or throughout the day, especially if you work from home. So you don't want to hear that and get distracted. So that's gonna be number one on the list. So number two is going to be poorly flipped homes. Now, what is a poorly flipped home? How can you tell when a home is poorly flipped? So if only a couple of the fixtures have been replaced, or a couple of the knobs on the doors have been replaced, but none of the hinges have been replaced, or it looks like they just kind of threw some paint on it and they ignored a lot of the major problems. So if it still needed fixes to its foundation, or under its crawl space, which we will get to later inside of the video, or if it needs like a new roof, a new HVAC, new flooring. If they just did the bare minimum, is what it looks like to make it look good, enough for somebody to come in and say that they like how it looks aesthetically. So mainly just aesthetic fixes is what you're going to be looking for. If it's going to be a bad flip, you really want to think about exactly what they didn't do, or if they even did it correctly. I know a lot of flips are usually done by the person themselves, which is usually the point, because if you hire a bunch of licensed contractors, then you're not really making a lot of money at the end of the day, right? So a lot of it is done by the person that bought the home. So it's not usually somebody that's licensed. They probably do work with some people that are licensed, but just something to be looking out for within the city. We don't see too much of that as of late. We have seen it a lot in the past, especially with our stock market crash that we had back in 2008. We've seen a lot of people buy out those homes and fix them real quick and then try to get them off the market. So definitely try to watch out for that. Do not go into a home and just look at all the aesthetics and say it looks nice. Really try to pay attention to the details, so you're not going to get a bad flip. So flips in general, I would probably try to stay away from for the most part, but just make sure that you know what to look out for. And if it is a good flip, then that's your call to make. But again, just watch out for them. Moving on to the next one is going to be homes with major structural issues, which I think is probably a given for most people to kind of back up whenever they see a home has issues like this. So how you spot some structural issues, you see lots of cracks in the walls, and also you can see them in the foundation if you're walking outside towards the ground. Especially if you're in a brick home, you're able to see some of the bricks crack apart and form that line across. And so definitely watch out for this, because again, foundation issues are not easy. They are not cheap to fix, and a lot of times you'll say it's a certain budget and it will cost a certain amount, but then usually go over just due to the nature of the project, and everything involved in it is just so expensive, especially if you have to start ordering the big huge girders that you end up putting up under the house. So those can cost a bunch of money, especially the labor that comes along with it as well. So just make sure that whenever you go, just try to not look at any homes that have structural issues. If you see a structural issue, even if it is a home that you like, maybe try to negotiate that in the price of the home. I would not take it at face value with there being some cracks and some potential foundational issues within the home. So definitely look out for that. Do not try to get into a home that has structural issues unless you are willing to pay that pretty penny or negotiate it out with the seller. So moving on to the next one is homes with multiple major issues. So we just talked about structural issues. This is multiple major issues. So that's like a broken HVAC plus a roof, and it has structural problems, or it has a problem in the crawl space, or it has mold, or it needs a lot of things replaced on the inside of the house, like completely needs to be gutted in some areas. So really need to look out for lots of these major issues, because usually whenever a seller goes to sell their home, they're going to try to fix a little bit of it here and there. But if they just kind of slap the paint on it, as I said earlier, just try to make it look good, and then it still has all of these other issues tagged along with it, that really begs the question of exactly what all is really going on with this house, and is it worth to fix it at the end of the day. So I would stay away from these homes unless you're looking for a fixer-upper and it has a decent price tag on it that you've negotiated out with the seller. If it does have a bunch of problems with it, but in general, I would try to stay away from these homes, especially if you're just trying to get into like a move-in ready, or it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly move-in ready. It can have a little bit of work that needs to be done to it, but to me, just major multiple issues like a new roof, new HVAC, like that right there is already, tens of thousands of dollars that you would have to spend on top of whatever your purchase price would be, and you wouldn't even be able to, get into your home right after you get it. You'd have to wait until all this stuff gets completed, and so it would become livable for you. So just one thing to think about. Definitely a home to try to avoid unless you're just trying to go that route and you have a good deal on it, and you have some connections to maybe it doesn't cost as much money to make all of those major changes. So next up is going to be, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, mentioned the word, so crawl spaces. So Columbus has a lot of crawl spaces in it, and I would say try to avoid homes with crawl spaces, even though it is, I wouldn't say the overwhelming majority of homes, but inside of the city, especially like in Midtown, Lake Bottom, even going up into the northern part of Columbus, all these homes that were built between like the 40s and 80s all have crawl spaces in them in these areas, and it is a real pain in the ass sometimes to deal with crawl spaces, just from the simple fact nobody really knows or wants to seal the crawl space whenever they get the home. So a lot of the times the plastic that they have put down will be all torn up. There's no humidity control down there, so there's a good chance that for there to be a lot of mold buildup as well as decay whenever it comes to the wood down there if it's not properly sealed. Also, a lot of rodents are able to get in there as well. I actually had a home in Lake Bottom, and I had a cat go underneath the house and give birth to kittens underneath the crawl space, and they were meowing all day long. They would never stop, and I eventually had to crawl down there myself and pick them up out of the hole that they found themselves in underneath the crawl space, and then take them out so they would finally have some rest and leave me alone. And I took care of them, and they are on to their happy homes now. But I would definitely try to avoid crawl spaces if you can. It's just a really big hassle to seal them. It is a lot of money to pay somebody to do. It is really cheap to do yourself, maybe a couple $100s, but a lot of people are not willing to, get on their belly and crawl through dirt, potentially lots of bugs, and potentially maybe some dead animals too, if it hasn't been taken care of underneath there, and laying all that wood down and putting the humidifier. It's a lot of work. It definitely takes a lot of time, which is why it costs a lot of money to pay somebody to do. But if you are the kind of person that doesn't mind doing stuff like that, then maybe crawl spaces wouldn't be a negative for you necessarily here. But in general, I think I would probably try to avoid it and get a house on an actual good foundation. I think it would be a lot better at the end of the day. But just something to think about. You can do what you want to do. These are all just suggestions at the end of the day from what I see inside of the city. Next one is going to be homes near power lines or that have power lines. So again, whenever I was living inside of my home, inside of the Lake Bottom area, we had power lines. They were not buried underneath the ground like they are starting to do around the city. So they still have a lot of power lines up, and a lot of the city has power lines that are still above the ground, unfortunately, even though they are working on it. But try to not get homes that are near these power lines, especially homes that are near like the really big power lines where they have to really flatten the land out and they have the really big poles. Those can also be kind of a deterrent for people as well, even though that they do come with flatter yards most of the time whenever you do see these power lines. But I've had problems with trees falling on power lines. Columbus has a lot of really old vegetation, especially in the center of the city. So you really have to worry about these, big pine trees. Not have too many pine trees, but a lot of oaks we do have, and they do, even though it is a stronger tree, it does break off limbs and they fall on power lines and they fall on houses. So mainly just them falling on power lines. I've lost power a bunch of times just due to that fact. And also just, I have no idea why it happens, but whenever we have a really big wind or a really big rain, at least whenever I was living there, we would always lose power for hours. I have no idea why it was happening other than the fact that something was happening with, the power lines, the transformers, and the weather had something to do with it. But if all of those were underground, I hope it would not have been a problem at the end of the day for that. But try to avoid that. A lot of people don't like it for several reasons, as well as it not being very aesthetically pleasing for some people. So if you can, it's not really too big of a don't buy, but it's definitely something to think about in the area, especially if like half the neighborhood has power lines and the other half doesn't have power lines. We see that a good bit here in Columbus as well. So just something to keep in mind for potential whenever you buy it to go to resell, so people have a little bit more of a good impression of it at the end of the day. The next thing is going to be the last one, which is going to be steep driveways. So steep in either direction, so a really big incline or a really big decline. And we have a good amount of those inside of the city, since we do have a good portion of hills and as well as kind of divots inside of the city. So really try to avoid ones that go up like real steep and go down real far, and they don't have a lot of space at the bottom of the driveway to park your vehicle or really maneuver around. It can kind of really be a big turnoff for some people looking to buy that house, because you are going to have to deal with it every day, right? So if you have a really steep driveway, you probably have a steep yard. So again, the mowing and landscaping is also all going to be uphill, downhill. So that's also really big deterrent for people whenever, especially for people that really want to do the landscaping, especially if your house is downhill. Nobody can really see your yard in the first place, right? So like right up next to your house. So people that are really big into landscaping probably are not going to like that. So try to avoid it, as well as another problem that we have, especially with the downwards slopes for the driveways in the neighborhoods, is going to be water. So a lot of these places you're probably going to have flood insurance or incentivized to get flood insurance, because there are not a lot of avenues for the water to go, at least that the city provides. You would have to do it yourself, like dig trenches alongside your house, so you have some of the water to go so it gets away from the base of your house. Gutters and stuff like that can also help with things, but just something to think about. You might have to be paying a little bit more or put a little bit more into the property with a home that has a really downward sloped driveway. Upward sloped driveways do not really have this problem, because everything just kind of rolls downhill, unless it has, it goes up and then it goes up again, then it might have some sort of problem, but it still rolls all right past it. Anyways, it is good to try to stay away from these properties, as it doesn't have to be level, but just not crazy steep in either direction. Really hurts the resale value of your home and kind of limits the buyer pool that you have, because someone that likes your home and then that has a really steep driveway, but they also like another home and it has a normal driveway, I'm pretty sure 8 out of 10 times, 7 out of 10 times, they're going to discuss it, the pros and the cons of it, and one of the things is going to be that really steep driveway. So you just want to kind of keep yourself out of that situation whenever it comes to buying a home. So anyways, guys, that's going to be about it for homes that you should not buy inside of Columbus, Georgia. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, please like it, subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more. Hit the notification bell if you would like to see my videos as soon as they're uploaded. I have a lot of stuff coming in the next weeks. Also, I am a real estate agent after all, so if you would like to schedule a consultation with me, if you would like to buy or sell within the city or around the city, please feel free to do so. I have my Calendly link in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you all have a great day. Peace.